And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lowdown Podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Lakers Insider for Lakers Daily. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about Max Christie. And you know what? Because I'm recording this or streaming this with the Chiefs and Ravens playing in my background over there, I have a football take that I'm going to offer up as well. But yeah, it's going to be a Max Christie show. It was a weird season. It is really difficult to figure out who this guy is as a player and what to even hope for realistically next year from him. Now that he is paid as, he's in his second contract and he is going to be leaned on heavily in the rotation. There's a lot riding on this guy. So let's try to figure out, the likelihood that he lives up to what we hope he is. Before we get to Max Christie, I'm going to start, with LeBron and with Anthony Davis and with Patrick Mahomes and with Lamar Jackson. And I'm watching these two teams play, right? So I'm watching Lamar Jackson. He just completed the pass to Mark Andrews, who's obviously been there for a while. But the first touchdown scored of the NFL season was Derrick Henry, somebody that the Ravens went out and got despite Lamar Jackson's playoff issues, right? They, they actually have decent skill position players this year as they retool around an MVP caliber talent. I'm watching on, they're losing currently, the Ravens are, to the Kansas City Chiefs, who are coming off of their second straight Super Bowl. And, Patrick Mahomes is, pretty good quarterback. The Kansas City Chiefs went out and drafted Xavier Worthy. They found their running back who runs like a drum solo, Pacheco. I'm looking at this group that they have out there, and I'm looking at both of these teams and how both teams, despite, their quarterbacks making a ton of money, despite, their core getting a little bit older, both of these teams that are on TV right now in the vast majority of American households have found ways to retool and keep that team afloat while understanding and embracing their identity. And when I look at the Lakers under Rob Pelinka, what's the identity? You would say LeBron James, Anthony Davis, okay, but they aren't willing to push all the chips onto the table, for LeBron James and Anthony Davis. So is that really their identity? What's the Lakers' identity for the last few years? It was the Russell Westbrook experiment. At the beginning of LeBron's tenure, they were trying to get him a point guard, and Magic Johnson, did fail to do so in such a miserable fashion that LeBron summed that experiment up with a fart noise. The 1 year that they had a working identity that actually was building on the strengths of LeBron and Anthony Davis was we saw what they did, right? We saw what that championship team did. And I know that there are some obvious issues with just trying to replicate things over time, but you do always need to understand what you're good at. You always need to understand, what's the foundation? How can we build on this foundation? How can we optimize this foundation and move forward that way? And I'm watching these two teams and all right, let's grant to the Lakers that it makes sense that they're a little nervous about building or pushing all the chips into the table for a 40-year-old LeBron James. Okay. But are the Chiefs that concerned about pushing chips into the middle of the table while their tight end Travis Kelce ages? Are the Ravens that concerned about pushing chips into the middle of the table as Mark Andrews also ages? No, what they did was they went out and supplemented those guys with talent, either at that position in Andrew's case with Likely, or in the Chiefs' case, they went out and found different positional players, different skill position players to go out and make up for any potential slippage that they see from Travis Kelce, understanding that when push comes to shove and Mahomes really needs an important completion, he's going to be looking in Kelce's direction. The Lakers, meanwhile, have basically sat it out. They've just been like, yeah, we aren't really looking to push chips into the middle of the table by way of first round pick. We also aren't going to draft very well with those first round picks. And also our margin work is going to leave a lot to be desired too. I'm looking at what they've done with even their Exhibit 10 contracts. And for Raj to be like hitting us in slack with, I don't know what they're doing. Like he watched all of those G League games last year, and this Valerio Bodon guy like wasn't good there. Got a DNP CD at the end of summer league this year. Wasn't good there either. Like it's an organization that has basically been paralyzed by way of all of their previous mess ups. And I guess if you really want to like boil things down, maybe that's their identity. Maybe their identity is that of an organization in such disarray that they can't even find Exhibit 10 deals that make it to training camp before getting waived. So that like, and like, all right, fine. You're concerned about pushing chips into the table with LeBron James. Well, you also have Anthony Davis in his prime. Anthony Davis is coming off arguably his best season as a Laker, maybe his best season ever, from start to finish of the regular season. And the Lakers are just like, yeah, but we need to draft this project point guard last year. And here we are. So I don't know. I'm watching these two teams play, and I'm watching other teams around the NBA understand their identity and build on that identity and continue to supply their star level talent or superstar level talent, if they have it, with, the means to actually compete at the levels that a superstar is expected to compete. And then I look over at the Lakers, and it's like, all right, you even lowballed Dan Hurley. You couldn't even get that right. Fantastic. All right, let's talk about Max Christie, who, by the way, like while I was looking up his season from last year, I know, and I even wrote it there on the sidebar there. Damn it, Darvin, because it feels impossible to talk about Max Christie in actual basketball terms, because it felt all year like he wasn't getting decent, minutes. And like, to be fair to Max Christie, like I still do think there isn't enough that we understand about this guy because of Darvin Ham. But the 23-24 season, he played 67 games. He averaged about 14 minutes a game, just hair over 14 minutes a game. This is where it gets interesting, though, right? If you look at his the summary of his game log here on Basketball Reference, he played 27 games. The most games that he played in the regular season was in the range of 0 to 9 minutes in those games. The second most games that he played over the course of the regular season was 22 games in the 20 to 29 minute range. He then played 17 minutes in the 10 to 19 minute range. And then he also played one game in the 30 to 39 minute range. But what that tells me, though, that like scatter grid is just that, like, at no point last year could he, and this could probably be said about a lot of guys on the team, but I think especially Max Christie, at no point last year could he enter a game with any kind of confidence about, yeah, I know what I'm going to be, how much I'm going to be playing tonight, who my guard, like who my mark is going to be, who my guy is going to be. Like, at no point last season did Max Christie enter a game and like know that he was probably going to be entering the game when his name was called. I think like that is the one thing that, even while I was surprised at how many games and how many minutes he played, um, it is impossible for a player, especially like you ask any NBA player, and I asked them, what's the most frustrating thing that a coach can do? And it was two things was my typical answer. One, he can just not communicate. He could just surprise me with whatever and just expect me to perform. And then two, the second most frequent answer that I got or that I'll get is uh like just I need to have a regimented life. I need to know when I'm going to be entering the game, for how long I'm going to be entering the game, to like a realistic standard. Uh, Obviously, if you're a role player, that is a little bit more difficult than if you're a superstar. But at the same time, like these guys basically want to be able to know night in, night out, at least roughly how often and when they're going to be playing. And what they're going to be expected to do while they're out there. And like even when you talk about from like summer league to the regular season, Max was asked to basically operate as like a lead guard in summer league, and then he went and he was he was asked to do a little bit of that with the main team, and then he was also like told, oh well, but now this time tonight you're going to be more of a 3-and-D wing. There just was no replication over the course of the season for Max, and it does make it damn near impossible for any player to perform up to standards with all of that going on. Um, so like I'll get to how he actually performed here in a second, but I feel like that's the context. Even before I talk about expectations for him last year, the understanding of like what statistically how often he played, but then also understanding looking beyond the initial numbers where you could just see, oh, he plays 67 games. Oh, wow, he played 14 minutes a game. That's a lot for somebody that we complain never played. Um, if you look beyond them and you read into the numbers a little bit, that's where you start to see why Lakers fans were so frustrated with how little we felt like we were seeing Max Christie. So let's back up. Let's try to outline our expectations going into last season for Max. And it's basically where we stand right now, where we saw some flashes in his rookie season that would indicate this guy has some defensive chops. He has a decent and replicable shot form. Like this guy looks like he has the makings of like a KCP type shooting guard. Not saying that he's going to be good he's ever going to be as good as KCP or anything like that. But like that's the kind of mold coming off of his rookie season that I envisioned for Max Christie. So then in his second year, that essentially was, can I get KCP a light? Can I see him put into situations and have an understanding of what he's expected to do out there, and see if he can like live up to that role consistently. And then in the summer league, we saw him show some on ball chops too, and it was like, well, shit, if he could do KCP stuff and also like occasionally handle a pick and roll here and there, well, wow, now we're talking about a very different player. Unfortunately, like I said in the next segment, we weren't ever consistently able to see, what he's able to do in whatever role, because he was never in any role consistently enough to actually compile any real data. So, um, I would call last season, like I would say he fell short of expectations. But in a way, he it's the rare season where a player actually played more than I remember him playing, but I'm also still going to call it an incomplete season in terms of grade report, because what do you do with that? Right. So looking ahead to next year with much of the same expectations, but much higher stakes, that's where things get a little tricky, a little interesting. So looking ahead to next season, what I would like to see from Max is essentially, some those stretches where we saw him and he was a 3-and-D shooting guard. That to me is what I would, if I were the Lakers and I were developing this guy into, molding him into the kind of player that we need him to be, I would start with go out there, defend the other team's best player on the perimeter, and then also, you know, stand in a corner and knock down shots. Um, or cut from the corner or go see, like, he's a much better athlete than I thought when he was first drafted. So, like, go see if you can mess with them on the backside with some offensive rebounding, do some cutting, some screen setting, all of that good stuff, and see where that gets us. That's essentially where I would lay my baseline expectations for. This is what I would like to see from him. Now, where it gets tough though is that with the way that this roster is constructed, and with and given basically what we know the Lakers are going to be trying to do, which is turn D'Angelo Russell into a better wing, a better like small forward, power forward type wing. That is where that baseline expectation for him, that baseline of expectations, is probably a little low. And it's like I talked to Raj the other day. It's not fair that you probably have to have higher expectations of Max than the ones that I laid out. But that's the predicament that the Lakers front office put everybody in, where everybody is going to have to be better at their jobs to make up for how bad the front office is at theirs. So, from Max, what the Lakers are probably actually going to need from him is, a legitimate, either like seventh man, 20 minutes a night at the shooting guard type of guy. Might need to start occasionally as well. And you probably need to shoot 37+% from 3-point range on like medium volume. I would say it's like 3 or 4. Like three, I would say 3-pointers attempted a game. Some games you'll shoot more, some games you'll shoot less. I would obviously like to see that number creep a little bit higher, but given the mouths that you have to feed on the offensive side of the ball for the Lakers, that's obviously pretty difficult. So, and then defensively, you need to make up for some of the guys that you're going to be playing with out there. You're going to have to need to make up for a D'Angelo Russell. You're going to have to need to make up, in some stretches for Austin Reeves, as he still kind of figures out how to balance a higher usage rate with still being adequate defensively. That was something I thought Austin kind of struggled with last year. So, like, my baseline would be, just go be KCP light, occasionally flash some on-ball chops, and we'll see where we get you. But in reality, what the Lakers actually need from this guy is something closer to, no, you're in the rotation. You're a rotation guy. You are somebody we are going to need a lot from. Good luck, bud. Now, let's try to figure out how likely it is that Max is actually ready to do either of those things. I'm pretty confident that he will exceed my baseline expectations. I'm pretty confident in Max Christie being able to go out there and at least prove Lakers fans right. Like, the Lakers fans who were begging for more Max Christie consistency from Darvin Ham last year. Like, I think at the very least, he's good enough to prove those of us who have been wanting to see more Max Christie correct in our desire to in that desire. Now, how likely is it that he exceeds those expectations to a point where the Lakers get enough out of him that they need from him, given his skill set and the lack of that skill set elsewhere on the roster? I'm not so confident there. I think he'll probably fall somewhere between exceeding my expectations, my baseline expectations, but also not quite being ready because he didn't have enough reps consistently in the same role last season to be able to step into that role this year. You also have a bit of a numbers crunch, a bit of a minutes crunch, at his position, where you'll have, Austin might be seen as a shooting guard. D'Lo is going to be playing 30 minutes a night. Gabe Vincent is going to be looking for his minutes as well. And I would imagine in his modern offense, you'll see some Gabe Vincent and another point guard type minutes out there. So if that's the case, you're starting to look at, really, and then also the Dalton Connect thing. Like, I think that's going to be a real training camp battle between those two guys for that, like, second or, top shooting guard off of the bench. And then, third kind of guard overall. It's going to be between Max and Dalton, and in a different way, Gabe Vincent. And, what that looks like is going to be really interesting. That's going to be one of those things that I'm going to be bugging all of my Lakers people about, is how is this guy looking? How's it looking between him and Dalton? How's it looking between, or how does it look out there in those minutes where Austin and Max are out there together, against, bench lineups with D'Lo and, say, like a Vando led second unit. Like, there's going to be a lot of questions being asked about Max Christie this year, to the point where, like, it's going to be like Vegas again, because that's essentially what wound up happening. Is I would ask everybody, hey, how about this Max guy? Whether it was Lakers people, league people, friends of mine who cover these other teams, I was just a madman 2 summers ago when it came to Max Christie. And I'll probably return to that this year. This time, though, with the understanding that there are real stakes involved when it comes to, can Max Christie live up to being the player that I think he is capable of being. All right. I'm going to go ahead and call it here. This is a shorter show. I know, going into a Friday, and I know it's been a lighter week on the RSS feed. Hear me out, though. I was looking at the different types of shows that I need to get done heading into training camp and heading into the regular season. And I was looking at how many shows I have and how many shows I have kind of mapped out. And I'm pretty sure I'll be able to go back to daily next week. Now, it's going to take a little bit of work because I have to reach out to some people, but I have my Contenders series that involves talking to other people about other teams and how those teams match up with the Lakers. I have a Trade Partners series where those teams that aren't necessarily contenders, I'm going to talk to people who cover those teams to figure out what deals to maybe keep an eye out for and how things went in previous conversations between the Lakers and those teams, if they've had any. And then obviously, I think this is about it. Like, I don't really feel the need to do a Gabe Vincent season re-preview because he didn't have a season last year. I don't really have anything to say about, like, Dalton Connect in a re-preview setting. I'll probably do a preview for him, just to, like, a segment or so, here and there. But for the most part, I think the season preview or re-preview series is just about wrapped up. And, you look at the players that we did. We did Anthony Davis. We did LeBron James. We did Austin Reeves. We did D'Angelo Russell. We did Rui Hachimura. We did Jared Vanderbilt. And now we've done Max Christie. And then, just to appease Raj, we did Jalen Hood-Schifino. Don't really want to do one on Jackson Hayes. Don't really want to do one on Christian Wood. As we get closer to the season and we start to hear more about what the rotation is going to look like, we'll do a positional kind of look at the Lakers roster as well. So I'm pretty sure, and I got to talk to my bosses at Odyssey to make sure we're all set up for this, but I'm pretty sure we'll be able to scale up to 5 days a week here during the week, breaking those shows down the way that we always do, if they are long enough to be broken down, and getting us all the way from now until opening night. And, to those of you who hung with us while we got to this point, shouts to you guys. You guys have been absolutely incredible. I would prefer if we had a few more subscribers before the start of the season. I would prefer that we hit that regular season with a few more things figured out on my end as well. But I'm pretty confident that we'll have all of that figured out, and we'll be able to have some really cool announcements here for you guys in the coming days / weeks or so. So yeah, until then, and until the next time you guys hear from me, I'm Anthony Irwin saying have a great rest of your weekend, make somebody else's, and I will talk to you on Monday. Have a good one, everybody.